Mom announced she's pregnant for the seventh time, but I'm done raising her minions. So, I moved out, but she called the cops on me and this happened. Subreddit. So, this ain't just a 7 kids situation. We're talking full-blown 7 deadly sins home edition. Greed, check. Wrath. Oh boy. Double check. It's long and messy. And if I hadn't lived it, I'd call BS too. Here's how it all went down. I'm 18 male. Start from the beginning. Picture this. Parents who were basically kids themselves when they had me. Mom was 19. Dad was 20. Real Einstein-level family planning right there. We crashed at my maternal grandparents' place since teenagers working minimum wage can't afford their own place. Those early years living with my grandparents were legitimately the best time of my childhood. My grandpa, let's call him Gramps, was this old-school mechanic who taught me everything from changing oil to rewiring outlets. Dude could fix anything with duct tape and determination. The man had a workshop in the garage that was basically my childhood paradise, organized tools, actual workbenches, and projects that made sense. My grandma, Nana, was basically Martha Stewart, but with actual warmth, homemade everything, spotless house, and she never once made me feel like a burden. Her kitchen always smelled like something amazing was happening, and there was always a fresh batch of cookies cooling on the counter. But here's what really made those years special. My grandparents treated me like I mattered. When I had a bad day at school, Nana would make hot chocolate and actually listen to what happened. When I was excited about something I learned, Gramps would put down whatever he was doing and give me his full attention. They showed up to every school event, remembered what I was interested in, and made me feel like being their grandson was something they were proud of. Meanwhile, my parents treated the place like a free hotel with room service. They'd roll in at 2 a.m. from whatever party they'd been at, sleep until noon, then complain about being stressed from adult responsibilities. My dad would sprawl on the couch playing video games while Gramps was trying to teach him how to change a tire or fix a leaky faucet. That's what AAA is for, my dad would say, never looking up from his controller. What happens when you can't afford AAA? Gramps would ask. I'll figure it out when I get there. That was my dad's approach to everything. Figure it out later. Let someone else handle it. Avoid responsibility until it became unavoidable. My mom wasn't much better. She dumped me on Nana whenever her friends wanted to hang out, never asking if it was convenient. Can you watch him for a few hours? Sarah's having a crisis and needs someone to talk to. Translation: I want to gossip and drink, so here's my kid. When you're 5 years old, eating fresh cookies and learning cool stuff from Gramps, you don't really analyze your parents' character flaws. I just knew that life with my grandparents felt safe and predictable in a way that following my parents around never did. They came the move that started my personal Vietnam. When I hit first grade, my parents announced they were ready for independence. They'd found this rundown rental house across town and were moving us out. The big reason for this sudden burst of maturity. Mom was pregnant again. I was actually excited. Finally going to have a little brother or sister, and we'd have our own place. Man, if I could go back and slap some sense into my 6-year-old self, I would. The house was basically a downgrade in every possible way. No more Gramps' workshop where I learned to use tools. No more Nana's cooking, just whatever frozen crap my parents could microwave. The place was this cramped 2-bedroom rental with thin walls, creaky floors, and a kitchen that barely fit 2 people. My parents acted like they'd upgraded to a mansion. Look, we have our own place, my mom would say. The yard was mostly dirt with a few patches of dead grass. And the neighbors were the kind of people who had screaming matches at 3 a.m. When my brother was born, I'm going to name him Screamer, because that kid had lungs like a fire truck siren. My parents started looking at me like I was their personal assistant. The progression was gradual but relentless. It started with little requests. Hey buddy, can you grab me a diaper while I finish this show? Keep your brother quiet. We're trying to have a conversation. I was 7 years old. 7. But apparently that qualified me for childcare duties in their minds. Within a few months, these little helps became expectations. I was expected to entertain Screamer while my parents watched TV, to help with feeding time, to change diapers when they were busy doing absolutely nothing productive. The worst part was their attitude when I'd complain. If I said I wanted to play outside instead of holding the baby, my mom would hit me with, "This is what families do. Don't be selfish." Like wanting to be a kid with some character flaw. My dad's contribution to this mess was even worse. He'd come home from his part-time job at some warehouse, collapse on the couch, and declare himself too exhausted to deal with baby stuff. "I worked all day. I need to decompress," he'd say, reaching for the TV remote while Screamer was having a meltdown. When they started going out on date nights and leaving me alone with Screamer, I knew I was screwed. Picture 8-year-old me microwaving SpaghettiOs and trying to get a toddler to bed while my parents were out reconnecting as a couple. They'd leave me with a list of instructions like I was some hired babysitter. Except I wasn't getting paid and couldn't quit. Bedtime is 8 p.m. There's formula in the fridge. Call only if it's an emergency. Emergency. I was 8. Everything felt like an emergency when you're alone with a screaming baby and no idea what you're doing. If anything went wrong, somehow it was my fault for not being responsible enough. Screamer wouldn't stop crying. I should have tried harder to calm him down. He spit up on his clean clothes. I should have been more careful during feeding time. The house was messy when they got back. I should have cleaned up while watching a toddler. Yep, it was that bad. But wait, it got worse when they decided to make more minions. Over the next 11 years, my parents decided to populate their own personal daycare center. 5 more kids joined our household, each one adding to the insanity. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters that turned my life into a survival horror game. Screamer, the first edition, still lived up to his name at 10 years old. This kid could hit decibel levels that probably violated noise ordinances. He discovered that screaming got him attention fast, so that became his default communication method. Didn't want to wear shoes. Scream. Didn't like what was for dinner. Scream. Couldn't find his favorite toy. Nuclear level. Screaming. The Destroyer. Kid number 3 earned his nickname by breaking everything. Gaslighting. Yeah, some kids also don't have to be parents to their siblings. Her face went cold. Gratitude goes a long way in this family. Your parents work hard to provide for all of you, and I work hard to raise their kids. What's your point? Your parents could have put you in foster care when things got difficult. Instead, they kept the family together. Like, basic parental responsibility was some kind of favor they were doing me. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just enabling my parents. She genuinely thought this was normal. The family dynamics got even more twisted when Karen started bringing her perfect little angels over for playdates. Her kids would sit quietly with coloring books while mine were turning the house into a disaster zone. And she'd make these pointed comments about different parenting styles. Some families are more structured, she'd say, watching Destroyer attempt to flush a toy car down the toilet. But every family finds what works for them. What worked for my family apparently was war zone. Karen's visits became a source of dread for me. She'd always find ways to reinforce my parents' narrative that I was lucky to be so trusted with important responsibilities. She'd praise my reliability in front of my parents, which just encouraged them to pile on more duties. "You've raised such a responsible young man." She'd say, yeah, they'd raised me to be responsible for everyone except myself. Fast forward to last month. I'm 18 now, barely surviving senior year with a 2.0808 GPA that should have been much higher when my parents decided to drop their atomic bomb during a family meeting. We have exciting news. My mom announced like she was revealing winning lottery numbers. I just knew what was coming. We're having another baby. Number 7. Lucky number 7. The room started spinning like I was in some twisted version of Inception. They weren't even telling me as their son. The way my dad phrased it made everything crystal clear. "We're going to need extra help when the baby comes. Good thing you're 18 now, so you can take on more responsibility without any legal issues." They'd actually thought about the legal implications of their child labor operation. Screamer actually started cheering. "Another baby. Can we name it?" The Destroyer looked confused. "Where are we going to put it?" "There's already no room." Spitter with her usual charm asked. "Can I feed it?" "I promise I won't spit on it." Velcro immediately attached himself to my leg. "Will you take care of this one too?" And Hurricane, as if she understood the conversation, started crying right on Yui. I looked at my parents and saw two people who had learned absolutely nothing from the first 6 disasters. My mom was glowing with excitement like this was the best news she'd ever shared. My dad had this satisfied smirk like he just solved all their problems by making another minion. That's when something inside me just snapped. I was done, completely, utterly done. I excused myself, went to my room, which was still half nursery, and called Gramps. Grandpa, they made another mistake. I need help. Can I please come live with you? The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds before he exploded. Not at me. At the situation. Those idiots are having another kid. Jesus Christ, what's wrong with them? I'd never heard Gramps swear before. That's when I knew he was as fed up with my parents as I was. Pack your essentials. We're coming to get you right now. While I was packing, my parents were already banging on the door demanding I come out. I ignored it. I grabbed some clothes, my phone and phone charger, and most importantly, my birth certificate and social security card. Gramps and Nana showed up within 30 minutes, and I was out of there waiting. I'd never seen my grandparents look so angry. Gramps looked like he wanted to shake my parents until their teeth rattled. The look on my parents' faces when they realized I was leaving. Pure shock. Not sad that their son was moving out. They were already panicking about who was going to handle their responsibilities. You can't just leave. My mom shouted like I was breaking some kind of contract. Watch me, I said, walking past her with my duffel bag. We're your parents, my dad added. Like that meant something coming from people who treated me like hired help for years. No, I said, stopping at the door. You're the people who gave birth to me. There's a difference. Gramps stepped up beside me. If you treated him like family instead of free labor, maybe he wouldn't be leaving. My dad puffed up like he was going to argue, but Nana shut him down with one look. We'll be in touch about his things, she said curtly, then guided me out the door. As we drove away, I could see my parents standing in the doorway with the kids' chaos erupting behind them. Finally getting a taste of what their lives look like without their unpaid babysitter. Within hours of my great escape, my phone turned into a notification nightmare. Angry texts, missed calls, voicemails ranging from furious to manipulative to downright pathetic. First came the anger. How dare you abandon your family like this? Get your ass home right now. You're being selfish and ungrateful. When that didn't work, they switched to guilt. Your siblings are asking where you are. Velcro hasn't stopped crying since you left. Then came the manipulation. We've always been there for you. Family sticks together through thick and thin. But the texts that really showed their true colors came from my dad at 2 a.m. Do you have any idea how much babysitters cost? You can't just leave us hanging like this. There it was. Their real concern wasn't losing their son. It was losing their free childcare. The mask was completely off. My mom followed up with increasingly desperate messages about how they needed me and couldn't function without my help. Not because they miss me as their child, but because I was essential to their household operations. When guilt didn't work, they escalated to threats. You're not 18 until graduation. We can force you to come back. We're calling the police. You're making a huge mistake that will ruin your future. They actually followed through on the police threat twice. Both times, the responding officers took one look at the situation and basically told my parents to get a life. The first cop was clearly annoyed. After talking to me privately and confirming I was there willingly, he explained to my parents that I was old enough to choose where I lived, but he's still our minor child. My mom insisted, ma'am, he's 18 and a high school senior. Unless you have evidence of kidnapping or coercion, there's nothing we can do. This is kidnapping. They're turning him against us. Officer Johnson looked tired. Did your son go willingly? Well, yes. Then it's not kidnapping. It's an adult making a decision about where to live. The second call, 2 days later, brought another officer who was significantly less patient. We've been through this already, he told my parents. Your son is old enough to decide where he wants to live. Maybe focus on the kids you still have at home instead of the one who's clearly capable of taking care of himself. My dad's face turned redder than a stop sign. This is harassment. They're interfering with our parental rights. Your parental rights over an 18-year-old are pretty limited, sir. I suggest you contact a lawyer if you think otherwise. The threat started next. They were going to sue my grandparents for interfering with parental rights and kidnapping me. Gramps, being the legend he is, called their bluff. Go ahead and get a lawyer. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you're suing to force your son into unpaid childcare. It's not unpaid childcare, it's family responsibility, right? And I'm sure a judge will be very interested in hearing about those family responsibilities. That shut them up real quick. Meanwhile, Paul was getting updates from Karen, who was apparently leading the family campaign to paint me as the villain. The family group text, which Paul shared with me, was a masterpiece of delusion. Karen, I can't believe he would abandon his family like this. After everything they've done for him, his poor mother is beside herself. 7 kids and no help. Paul, maybe if they treated him like a son, he wouldn't have left. Karen, he's being selfish and ungrateful. Family sticks together through thick and thin. Paul, family doesn't exploit the kids. Karen, you're filling his head with nonsense about being exploited. He had a roof over his head and food on the table. Paul, and what did he have to do to earn those basic necessities that every parent is legally required to provide? Karen didn't have an answer for that one. The best part was watching the family dynamic shift in real time. Other relatives who had been silent started asking questions about the situation. My mom's cousin posted in the group chat. Wait, why was he doing so much childcare? Aren't there 6 other kids and 2 parents? Suddenly, Karen was backpedaling. He wasn't doing that much. He just helped out like any good big brother. Paul, bless him, wasn't letting that slide. He had a baby sleeping in his room and was doing night feeds. That's not helping out. That's being a parent. The truth was coming out. And Karen didn't like how it made her sister look. Here's where things got really interesting. Turns out Gramps and Nana had been documenting more than I realized. Every concerning conversation, every time I'd shown up exhausted, every joke I'd made about being the third parent, they'd been keeping track. Gramps pulled out this notebook he'd been maintaining for months. Dates, times, observations about my behavior and stress levels. Dude was basically running his own investigation without telling anyone. The notebook was damning entries like March 15th, he fell asleep during dinner. Says he was up all night with the baby again. April 2nd, missed his school's science fair because parents needed him to babysit. He'd been working on his project for months. June 10th, noticed he's lost weight. My grandparents had been preparing for this moment. When they called CPS, they had documentation going back months. Screenshots of texts where my parents demanded I cancel plans for babysitting duty. Pictures I'd send of the house, disaster zones as jokes that actually showed the chaos and neglect. The social worker assigned to the case was Mrs. Madison. When she showed up at my parents' house for the initial visit, she found exactly what you'd expect, chaos. My parents tried to play it off as just one of those days and kids being kids. But she wasn't buying it. Where do the children usually play? She asked, looking around the disaster zone that used to be a living room. Oh, anywhere really. We believe in letting kids be creative. I see. And who typically supervises their creativity? My parents exchanged glances. Well, usually our oldest helps out, but he's not available right now. Not available? How? He's staying with his grandparents temporarily. Teenage rebellion phase. You know how it is. Mrs. Madison made a note in her file. I'd like to speak with the children individually if that's okay. When she interviewed my siblings separately, the truth came out fast. Kids are terrible liars. Who usually dealt with the baby at night? Me. Who helped with homework? Me. Who got them ready for school when mom and dad were too tired? Take a wild guess. Who made sure they brushed their teeth, had clean clothes, and ate something resembling breakfast? 3 guesses. First 2 don't count. Screamer, bless his chaotic little heart, was particularly honest. He does everything. Mom and dad watch TV mostly. My older brother helped me with everything. The house inspection was even worse. How long has your oldest child been primarily responsible for childcare duties? She asked during the formal interview. He's not primarily responsible. He just helps out. According to the other children, he was the one handling night feedings, bedtime routines, and daily care for the infant. Would you consider that helping out? My parents fumbled for explanations, but they couldn't come up with good justifications. The final nail in the coffin was when she asked to see where Hurricane slept. My parents had to admit the crib had been in my room. So, where's the baby sleeping now? Oh, we moved the crib to the living room temporarily while we figure out a more permanent solution. Temporarily, right? Mrs. Madison wrapped up her initial visit with a promise to return for follow-up inspections and individual interviews with each family member. The look on my parents' faces suggested they knew they were getting screwed. The CPS investigation wrapped up after 3 weeks of unannounced visits, interviews, and documentation review. The official finding was everything I'd hoped for. Inappropriate delegation of parental responsibilities to a minor child, resulting in educational impact and emotional stress. In non-bureaucratic terms, my parents were guilty of exactly what everyone with functioning brain cells already knew. The consequences were beautiful, mandatory parenting classes, not suggested, required. My parents, both in their 30s, had to sit in a classroom with other dysfunctional adults, learning what responsibilities you can actually give to children of different ages. Required child care education. They had to complete a course on age-appropriate household tasks and recognizing signs of stress in children. 6 months of supervised visits from a family caseworker. Madison would be making surprise visits to ensure they weren't pulling the same crap with my remaining siblings. The house had to maintain certain cleanliness standards. The kids had to be properly supervised, and my parents had to demonstrate actual parenting instead of chaos management. Professional child care requirement. This was my personal favorite. They were now required to use actual paid babysitters for date nights and errands. No more free labor from their kids. Written acknowledgement of my rights. They had to sign a document stating that I had the right to pursue education and activities without being burdened by excessive household responsibilities. The real consequences hit them where it hurt most, their wallets and their reputation. Word spread through their social circle about the CPS investigation fast. Suddenly, other parents were asking uncomfortable questions about their family dynamics. Some of their friends started viewing them differently when they learned why their oldest son had moved out. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. Professional childcare for 5 kids during their weekly date night. That's easily $100 to $150 per night. Now, they had to pay someone or drag all the kids along, which meant dealing with the chaos themselves. My dad had to pick up extra shifts just to cover the babysitting costs. My mom couldn't maintain her part-time schedule anymore because someone actually had to be home with the kids during non-school hours. During one particularly tense family gathering, Karen tried to defend them. CPS just doesn't understand how close families operate. They're interfering with family dynamics. Paul, fed up with her enabling, finally let her have it. Close families don't treat their teenagers like unpaid employees. Maybe if you'd spoken up instead of encouraging this mess, things wouldn't have gotten this far. I was supporting my sister, she defended. You were enabling child exploitation. The room went dead silent. Even my parents couldn't argue with that assessment. My mom's pregnancy became a source of stress instead of excitement. The custody threats evaporated when their lawyer, they eventually did get one, explained that any judge would laugh them out of court for trying to force an 18-year-old into unpaid childcare. The lawyer recommended they focus on repairing our relationship instead of trying to compel my return. As for me, I'm absolutely thriving. My grades bounced back immediately once I started getting full nights of sleep. I went from a 2.8 GPA to pulling 3.6 by the end of senior year. I got accepted to that engineering program I missed the previous summer. They had a spot open for a spring session. My college applications are looking solid. And I've even got a part-time job at Gramps' buddy's auto shop. Real work that pays actual money. Revolutionary concept. Gramps and Nana refuse any money from my parents for my expenses. We're investing in our grandson's future. Nana told my mom during one heated phone call. Something you should have been doing all along. The relationship with my parents is permanently damaged, but honestly, I'm good with that. Some of my siblings started asking questions about why I left and why strangers keep visiting the house. Screamer asked Mom, why did he have to take care of Hurricane at night when that was parent stuff? My mom's response, it's okay. Families have to help each other. But Screamer, not satisfied with vague answers, shot back, "But why didn't you help him with his homework like he helped us, out of the mouths of babes?" Paul has become an even bigger part of my life, taking on that big brother role I never knew I needed. The best part, my parents are finally learning what it actually takes to raise 6 kids. Paul's response was perfect. "Welcome to what actual parenting costs." Most people figure that out before having 6 kids. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Was he right to leave? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe if the story resonated with you.